All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most powerful ideas in history, materialism. At its heart, it's a really simple idea about what reality is actually made of. And it's an idea that has shaped, well, pretty much everything for centuries. You know, for thousands of years, materialism had this incredible promise. It said that everything, from the biggest stars to the smallest stones, and even our own thoughts, could be explained just by physical stuff bumping into other physical stuff. But now, that simple promise is starting to look a little shaky. And the challenge isn't coming from where you'd expect, it's coming from science itself. So let's make this personal right away. Think about that feeling of being you, all your hopes, your memories, your awareness of being alive right now. Is that experience just neurons firing in your brain? That's not some abstract thought experiment. It's the central question materialism claims to have an answer for. So, what are we actually talking about here? Well, at its core, materialism says there's only one kind of stuff in the entire universe. And for materialists, that stuff is matter. Things like your mind and consciousness, they aren't some separate, spooky spiritual thing. Nope. They are just what happens when physical things get really, really complex. Okay, so first up, an idea forged in time, because materialism didn't just pop up overnight. It's got this incredibly rich history that goes all the way back to the ancient world. Way back, thousands of years ago, you had guys like the Roman poet Lucretius. He was writing about ideas from Greek thinkers like Democritus, and their vision of the universe was shockingly simple. It was just made of two things. You had atoms, these tiny, indivisible little particles, and you had the empty space they moved around in. That's it. Everything else was just these atoms crashing into each other. And that ancient idea didn't just sit there, it evolved in some pretty dramatic ways. It kind of faded away for a while, but then it came roaring back during the Enlightenment. Thinkers wanted to explain the world without relying on superstition or supernatural causes. Then fast forward to the 19th century, and people like Marx and Engels took it in a totally new direction, arguing that it wasn't ideas that drove history, but the material, economic conditions people lived in. Now, here's something that's really crucial to get. Materialism isn't one single idea. It's more like a whole family of ideas, a spectrum. And there's a lot of debate inside that family about how it all actually works. So you've got two main camps here, and this really gets to the heart of the debate. On one side, there's reductive materialism. This is the nothing but view. A thought is nothing but neurons firing. Love is nothing but a chemical reaction. On the other side, you've got non-reductive materialism. They'd say, whoa, hold on. Yes, everything is physical, but when systems get complex enough, new things can emerge, like consciousness, that are real, and you can't understand them just by looking at the individual parts. And the debate gets even more nuanced from there. Today, a lot of people prefer the term physicalism, which is broader and includes things like energy and space-time. And then you get some really radical views, like eliminative materialism. These folks argue that the things we talk about all the time, like our beliefs or desires, are basically just folktales. They're illusions that science will eventually prove don't even exist. For centuries, materialism's greatest strength was science, especially physics. It was the perfect partnership. But then, in the 20th century, something incredible happened. Physics, materialism's best friend, started to become its biggest problem. And you gotta understand, this wasn't some philosopher sitting in an armchair poking holes in the theory. The problem came directly from the lab. That classic, simple idea of matter being like tiny, solid little billiard balls, well, it just completely fell apart when we started looking at the quantum world. I mean, just listen to this. This is from Max Planck, the literal father of quantum theory. He said there is no matter as such. He argues that what we think of as solid matter is really just the result of a force, and then he says we have to assume that behind that force is a conscious and intelligent mind. I mean, wow, that's a mind-blowing statement coming from one of the greatest physicists who ever lived. And he wasn't alone. Werner Heisenberg, another giant of quantum mechanics, he drove the point home even harder. He basically said materialism was built on a huge mistake, the mistake of assuming that the super weird world of atoms works like the solid, predictable world we see every day. He puts it so bluntly, atoms are not things. And this really gets us to the modern picture. As physicists Davies and Gribben put it, that whole idea of solid, substantial matter, it just dissolves away. What replaces it is something way, way stranger, a universe made of invisible fields of energy, and what we call particles are just weird little vibrations in those fields. So, all of this leads us right to the absolute core of the debate today. If matter isn't solid stuff, then what on earth is it? This one question has completely reshaped the conversation and forced materialism to go back to the drawing board. You see, modern physics throws not one, not two, but three major wrenches into the old idea of matter. First, Einstein's relativity shows us matter and energy are basically two sides of the same coin. Then quantum field theory comes along and says, hey, the fundamental reality isn't particles, it's fields. And to top it all off, cosmology tells us that 95% of the entire universe is made of so-called dark matter and dark energy, which is really just a fancy way of saying we have no idea what it is.
So because that word matter has become so loaded and, well, problematic, a lot of thinkers just don't use it anymore. They've adopted a new term, physicalism. It's an attempt to save the core idea while making room for all the strange things modern science has discovered.
You can really see the shift here. We've gone from a really simple idea of the world being made of tiny bits of stuff to this much broader, more abstract idea of the world being made of physical things, which could be anything from energy fields to the fabric of space-time itself. But here's the thing. Just changing the label on the box doesn't solve the mystery of what's inside. That fundamental question the ancient Greeks were asking all those thousands of years ago, it is still right here with us. If the world isn't made of tiny solid bits, what is it really made of? And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. If what we call matter is really just a vibration, a ripple in an invisible field, and our own consciousness somehow arises from that, what does that actually imply? It suggests that the solid reality we think we know and the consciousness we use to know it might be far stranger and way more connected than we ever imagined.